Before proceeding with the video, you should know that I didn't make up the rather unappealing name of Bitch Queen as one of the monikers of Umberlee, as she is in fact referred to frequently as the Bitch Queen. A title well earned, as we will learn shortly, among others, the Wave Mother and the Mother of the Deep. And recently we had the opportunity to see the Water Queen's house, as well as Umberlee's priestesses, in the Baldur's Gate city reveal, in great detail in fact. The Water Queen's house is the oldest temple in all of Baldur's Gate, and by the looks of it, Larian has done an excellent job in creating it. If we look at the scene, we see the clergy of Umberlee gathered round another priestess, likely dead, led apparently by a high priestess. What is likely happening here is a sermon given to the other clergy members after this initiate failed the ritual called the drowning. The drowning ritual is performed by a supplicant or novice cleric in order to fully ascend in the service of the Bitch Queen, and those who survive are accepted into the clergy, and those who die are simply forgotten, or as is possible here, used for the purposes of religious instruction, or to set an example for those who fail to live up to Umberlee's demanding standards. But you know how much I like talking about the gods, and given that the Water Queen's house is likely an important structure in Baldur's Gate, and it wouldn't surprise me at all if we got involved in Umberlee's intrigues, I thought it was about time to talk about the Wave Mother. Umberlee's personality is very easily described as petty, vindictive, malicious, and thoroughly evil. Capricious in the extreme, Umberlee feels no obligation to honor any agreement or promise made to anyone except herself. In addition, she is greedy and cruel in the extreme, demanding constant tribute from her followers and those who enter her realm, the sea. She particularly enjoys sadistically sinking ships and conjuring up sea storms and feeding the victims of these maelstroms to her shark servitors, as well as watching mortals writhe in agony as their lungs are filled with water and the waves claim them. She doesn't even have a loyal relationship to her clergy, with whom she is just as fickle and untrustworthy, and her worshippers are constantly on their toes in an effort to propitiate her. If it isn't clear by now, then I'll state out loud that virtually no one worships Umberlee out of respect, love, or admiration, but rather out of fear. The sole exception to this is her wereshark worshippers, and she created weresharks to counter Seluna's involvement in the more positive aspects of lycanthropy. The fundamental problem with Umberlee is that everyone who needs to traverse the sea will inevitably have to appease her, and even when they do so, she can and will ignore such appeasement and offerings just to spite such mortals, and for her own amusement. Her personality is in many ways similar to that of Lulz, sharing her capriciousness and malice, and for her worshippers and propitiators alike, favored one day and forgotten the next. Umberlee belongs to the so-called gods of fury, evil and destructive gods that symbolize the most destructive aspects of nature. These gods are nominally led by Talos, the god of storms and destruction, and include Auril, the goddess of cold and winter, as well as Malar, the beast lord, god of hunting and bloodlust. As could be expected, relations between these gods are unstable at best, and Umberlee would all too happily kill Talos and steal his portfolio if she could, but has a somewhat respectable alliance with Auril if only to offer some resistance to Talos, who tends to overwhelm the other gods of fury and drain them of power. Most recently, Umberlee has been considered part of a group of gods called the First Circle, revered by druids, although not all druids revere her in this manner. Umberlee's dogma is fairly simple. The sea is vicious and cruel, as is her mistress. Ethics, morals, promises, none of these things matter when you are out in the open sea, at the mercy of the goddess. Those who dare sail the savage sea must be ready to pay homage to the Bitch Queen for the audacity of braving her domain. Fear is the main principle of Umberlee's faith. Mortals are meant to tremble before her power, which stretches across all the seas and oceans of Toril, and only their supplication might grant the mercy of Umberlee, if she is so inclined. Umberlee's clergy is commanded to instill this fear in others, by demanding high tithes from all those who request their services, above all, when they are taken on board ships to traverse the seas, as many sailors see the priesthood of Umberlee as the only safeguard against Umberlee's wrath. In addition, Umberlee's clergy is almost entirely female. 9 out of 10 clerics of Umberlee are female. It is likely that the goddess herself favors this arrangement, which is why it has remained so since the founding of the church. Despite all of this, sailors are not only at the mercy of Umberlee, despite what she might claim. Sailors will also look to Selûne and her light in the sky to guide them when lost at sea, and Valkyr, a lesser deity of sailors and sailing, whom mortals pray to for safe passage across Umberlee's domain. Valkyr and Umberlee are sworn enemies, and those who venture out to sea are often left in a coin toss situation of whether or not to pay an unreliable tribute to Umberlee in the hopes they survive the trip, or pray to the less powerful Valkyr in similar such hopes. And there's something interesting I'd like to point out about Umberlee concerning the city of Baldur's Gate, and this is the fact that Baldur's Gate is an incredibly tolerant city compared to many cities in the realms that would simply not outright tolerate a temple to a deity as obviously evil and untrustworthy as Umberlee is. Part of this is simply due to the fact that Baldur's Gate is essentially a port city on the Chianthar River with very close access to the ocean, and thus its inhabitants must unfortunately pay their dues to the Bitch Queen, if trade and the economy wish to continue, because Umberlee would not be above punishing a lack of such tribute. And this really points to the fundamental mercantile nature of Baldur's Gate, something I'll talk about in a future video. Indeed, the other two deities that are most venerated by the citizens have very little to do with Umberlee, and these deities are Tymora and Gond, both of which contribute in their own way to financial prosperity. Tymora is the goddess of luck, and luck and fortune are required for any business venture to succeed, and Gond is the god of invention, whose technological marvels have benefited the citizens of Baldur's Gate over the ages, and also bolster the economy. Now, as I've said, I think it would be very cool to have some quest involving the Water Queen's house in the game, and honestly, I think there will be, considering the temple is there in the first place. After all, it couldn't be there in all its glory just to be stared at by the PC, now could it? However, before going, I'd like to let you know I have a Discord server for my subs to join to discuss Baldur's Gate 3 and all matters RPG related. And as always, thank you for tuning in. If you could leave a like, comment, share, and subscribe, it would really help with the channel and it would be much appreciated. And I'll check you out next time. Take care.